Hey Zsolt, so great to be with you. Thanks so much for inviting us to your home today.
It's my pleasure.
Great
Thanks for
to be
having
with
me.
our TIA crowd. Wanted to just make sure that anyone watching is first of all aware of what a Renaissance man you are. You know, your old neighbor Joe Rohde down the street. People kind of know the global trekker traveler, and we're going to get into that. But I understand you spent your first 2 decades in Eastern Europe, and musician, professional athlete, actor. Tell us about where your roots are from.
Well, I mean, I was born in Hungary. I basically grew up in Budapest, which is the capital. And, you know, I came from an artistic family. Not just my father was a commercial graphic artist and a painter, but we had musicians, wood sculptors, and so on and so forth in the family already. So I was always, since I was born, exposed to art, you know, and beauty of life, you know. So therefore, you know, basically I very soon I got into learning different languages, music, dance, so on and so forth. So I had a very active and colorful childhood growing up in Hungary, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of being a Hungarian origin. So I still cherish my culture as much as I can, which is not easy to do when you're abroad, but try to keep the traditions and try to keep the language and honor whatever I brought with me from my home country. So yeah, I got into acting, and I had the opportunity to play in a movie. The movie was based on young people leaving Hungary back in the 60s, you know, and looking for freedom. So it was very apt at the time for me to be in a rock and roll band, a Hungarian rock and roll band as a singer. And the movie was called Time Stands Still. And it was actually played in the US for a whole entire year as one of the most successful foreign movies back in the time.
Kidding.
Yeah,
look for that on YouTube. Time Stands Still.
Time Stands
Awesome.
Still, yeah. Peter Goddard was the director. So, I mean, all these little innuendos in my life kind of prepared me. I went to art school, studied art all my life, prepared me kind of to do what I do today. However, my education really wasn't aimed, you know, for team finishes per se. That was kind of like picked up along the way.
I don't know where you get a degree in building mountains.
Yeah, you know, yeah, right, exactly. So it was interesting because when we left Hungary, you know, I was young, and one day it just hit me to, I just wanted to be free, you know. And in my family, my father particularly, they were very interested, but most people in Europe actually at that time were very interested in Native American culture. You know, we read a lot of books about Native Americans, we watched a lot of Native American movies, which back in Europe, Eastern Germany, and even Yugoslavia actually did a lot of Native American focused movies, which was interesting because when I was growing up, the Native Americans were the heroes, not like in Hollywood, right? So it was just the opposite. So that whole thing kind of cultivated an appreciation and an interest in Native American culture. So I really wanted to be a little bit more involved and more supporting, if you will, even when I was young. So that was one of the main driving forces for me to come to America, really.
Yeah, I remember growing up in Europe during the Cold War too, and visiting some of these off-kilter theme parks, and you're right, that Native American representation.
Yeah, and we looked upon Native Americans as heroes, as the symbol of, you know, strength and honesty and brotherhood and so on and so forth. So when I came to the United States, obviously you learn the reality, which is not as bright and sparkly as we had thought back in Europe, but nonetheless that just even gave me more drive and more strength to be involved in the culture and support the culture. And that really came to a fruition where when I had the opportunity to be in charge of the Tree of Life, which is the centerpiece for Animal Kingdom. I was putting the team together, which was one of the first really international teams, you know, even within the Disney company. I had people from Ireland, from France, Native Americans, Afro-Americans, and of course some local artisans as well. But you know, I decided that, you know what, if we're gonna do something this important, you know, for our guests, it just should, it would not be right if we didn't have Native Americans involved in the process. So at the time, you know, there was no, you know, internet necessarily or none of that, so we were faxing back and forth and phone calls, and got fortunate to find 3 wonderful Native American artists who are still with us actually today, on and off, working on projects where we have certain things that they would, you know, be great at. So that is a rewarding experience for me, you know, basically leaving Hungary and being able to do that.
Was that what was it that brought you to America? Was that the tether, the
pretty much, and the fact, the freedom, you know, I just, you know, during the communism, you realized with an artistic mind and soul, you know, it's like, this is just not, I'm not gonna be happy here, you know, which was, imagine, it was a huge decision being 23 years old. Wow. And deciding that, okay, I'm going, you know. So with my ex-wife, we married in Hungary, and we left together. So we came out here and created a family, and we have 2 children. Now I have 4 with my my second
Beautiful
wife.
bride.
Yes, and we share our families. So everything works out just fine. But it's
yours, mine, and ours.
Yeah, right. It's a heck of a road, I have to say, though, and also just to be able to get into a business of creating mountains and theme parks. I mean, I never thought I could do that, frankly, in Hungary. So
yeah, how did that connection happen to
the connection
to Disney and Imagineering?
Well, now
you first of all, you're telling me where you would go and spend your vacations.
That's right.
When you came here.
Yeah, when I came to the States, pretty much we didn't go to the beach. We didn't go to vacation. I really wanted to just visit Native American reservations and see how they live, see what they do, and just being amongst, you know, Native Americans just was such an uplifting thing for me, you know. So basically for the first, you know, 15 or so years, every time I had off was basically just traveling and learning and visiting, you know, about reservations and meeting Native Americans and learning about their culture. So and I would not do it any other way, to be honest with you. But the interesting thing, to your question, that how did I get involved with what I'm doing today? Now that I think back, I remember we had to stay in Paris before we, you know, after I basically left Hungary as a political refugee. Basically, we had to stay in Paris to wait for the paperwork to work out and all that. And there was a subway station. We were going down the stairs, and this big poster that Disney's coming to Paris. I mean, to France. I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting, Disney, France, you know. I mean, we didn't know much about Disney at the time, but it was interesting because somehow it did hit me a little bit differently than just any other poster, not knowing anything that I would be involved with that at all. But the thing was that immediately, you know, the thought was that if I would or could work for that company, that means I could come back to Europe, right? But it was like, as I said, it came and gone. Boom, that was it. That was the end of that story.
More of a logistical.
That's right. So when we came to United States, obviously, you know, you have to have a sponsor and somebody who can, you know, kind of help you along the way. And we ended up in Lansing, Michigan. That's the government kind of chooses, if you don't have family or sponsors here that you knew of at the time, then they would place you somewhere. So that was Lansing, Michigan for us. And being an artist, you know, they look at my resume, and you had to get a job immediately when you come to the United States at the time. And they had this putt-putt golf course happening in East Lansing, and it was snowy, it was just cold, miserable, and they took us, it was called the Refugee Services. It was like a government, you know, service to help refugees to get established and so on and so forth. So they took me out to that site, and it was covered with snow. They didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. I just saw this stuff, you know, covered with snow, and they said, oh well, we don't know, it might be a theater or whatever, but you know, we need to meet the guy who's doing it, which I did. So I had an interview with the guy, and I got hired to build a putt-putt golf course.
No kidding.
Now, he had this Disney dream. He really wanted to work with Disney at one point. And the golf course was themed, you know, I'm caveat this, right? Okay, it's like English, yeah, right, putt-putt golf course, but he had this this image of a little western town and the waterfalls and the golf course, you know, kind of situated in that little themed environment, which was great because I actually got exposed to everything immediately. You know, I learned how to weld, how to shot concrete, how to sculpt cement, how to paint. I mean, it was just this crash course of a little bit of theme finishes, everything, you know. So then we moved basically down to Florida because he really wanted to get with Disney. And to make the long story short, I ended up basically having an interview with Disney. He went on his own way, and then I ended up working on Typhoon Lagoon. That was my first job, actually, which is
from a putt-putt golf course to Typhoon Lagoon,
yeah.
The first themed water park. Wow.
Yes, yeah. So that was my first Disney, you know, project, Disney job. At the time, you had to, if you really wanted to sculpt, and it was interesting, they said, would you like to art direct or sculpt? And I said, well, I'd love to sculpt, that's what I do. Well, at that time, in order for you to be able to sculpt and use your tools, you had to become part of a union, right? Which was Buena Vista Construction Company. So I had to actually learn how to do plastering as a plasterer, which was great because it really helped. It prepared me to know about the material and the tools and how to use, you know, your tools and how to achieve different textures and so on and so forth. So that was a great quick education to prepare me to do what I do today. So that's the connection right there.
That's great. Can you spend a little time actually spelling out your art form? You know, I mean, because we all know Disney Imagineering, the themed entertainment world, has such a motley crew of diverse disciplines, from artists and architects.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, in Imagineering we have somewhere around 170 different disciplines working together. So that's quite a complex. From
poets to accountants,
musicians, exactly, everything you can think of, right? Engineers, architects, landscape architects, you name it. But the interesting part is actually that I did end up going back to Paris with Disney. Funny enough,
yeah,
you know, so that was like
that original subway poster.
Yeah, from the subway poster. Actually ended up doing the first mountain. Well, actually, I take it back, the second mountain, because you know Typhoon Lagoon was the first one actually. And ended up doing Big Thunder, you know, in Euro Disney, and I became the overall rockwork field art director for the whole park.
Kind of inspired by Monument Valley out there.
Yeah, which was a big deal at being 24 years old, you know. Yeah, it was a great opportunity, let's put it that way.
Monument Valley in Laval.
Yeah, exactly.
24 years old, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was a great trip. We really enjoyed it. It was great to be back and being able to visit with the family as a normal person, not hiding and all that. Yeah. So, you know, that was a wonderful, wonderful experience. Working with all kinds of nationalities at the time. You know, we had Irish contractors and all kinds of people from all over Europe were working on it. So it was a gigantic development. So it took a lot of people to build the park, and that was our first actual relocation, you know, if you will. But basically that helped me to kind of a little bit broaden, you know, my contribution to the theme park industry. I kind of worked towards becoming more than just a rockwork sculptor per se. So I really wanted to get into the color and the theme finishes. So right now I'm with Walt Disney Imagineering as a creative executive, and I'm in charge of all the theme finishes, which includes rockwork, character facade, character paint, artificial foliage, hardscape. So those are basically the finishes that the guest can see as they walk into the park. So you're involved
earlier on in the process.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you keep involvement as it's being executed.
So pretty much we're very involved from the very beginning because we're helping to establish the look, the narrative, and what the guests will experience. So that gives us an opportunity to be able to contribute to the whole, you know, progress from A to Z pretty much until we turn the parks over.
So yeah, just as a case study, I know we were just stepping over some moving boxes. You're getting ready to get shipped off to Japan here, just as you were settling into your beautiful home here. You know, talking about Fantasy Springs, for example, you know, I know some of the model art got released. Can you talk about that process of kind of the transition from the creative team and Robert Coltrane to
Absolutely.
to your team?
So basically, the way the system works, that we have a group of people who are specialized in the blue sky, you know, world, meaning coming up with ideas, what the project should look like, what the narrative should be, so on and so forth. So that takes a while to kind of settle down on a theme for a project, every project. But they work very hard on make sure that we have a great, entertaining, and beautiful, you know,
Emotionally compelling,
project for our guests to enjoy. So once that's basically developed, and you know the company and funded and the budget is created, and we know that okay, this is something that we can make, you know, we can create within the
it's a lot more than just a pretty picture.
And a lot more than that, yes, of course, a lot more involved than most people realize, because you know we have to look at demographics, we have to look at everything else, how many people will come, what are they interested in, what are the newest or latest, you know, intellectual properties that we would like to entertain, and so on and so forth. So it's that usually lasts about a year, something like that, in the life of creating a park or an attraction. And once that's done, then we come in. Basically, when I say we, basically we take the two-dimensional plan and interpretation of the project and create a three-dimensional, you know, interpretation of that. So basically we start with a small scale model, usually just to figure out, okay, how big is, what is the property line, you know, how many restaurants, how many bathrooms, how many this and that, paths, you know, so on and so forth, the show building, how we, you know, dress that up so it doesn't look like a, you know, a building. So that's the process where we get involved, and our job is to really help to immediately take some of those two-dimensional beautiful images and turn it into a park, you know. So we create, but then once the plan is settled and figured out, then we step up to another larger scale model, which is usually an eighth of an inch to a foot, you know, scale, and keep developing the details, you know, and then finalize, because a lot of times look through the life of a project, a lot of things change, you know, even until almost the last minute sometimes, you know. And so we keep refining until we really reach that moment where, okay, this is it, this is what we're going to build. And that's when we create a ½ inch to a foot scale model, and that's where we actually figure out the color, the neighborhoods, the color scheme, the textures, the, you know, everything. Basically everything is detailed on that model that we're going to build. And it becomes usually basically a contract document, so the vendors, the general contractors know, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's a very helpful tool, not just creatively, but logistically as well.
Fascinating. Well, I got to tell you, years ago, I had a chance to collaborate with Tony Baxter, John Stone on, you know, relieving their guilt for taking out Captain Hook's pirate ship of Fantasyland and not being able to bring it back. So we did the Neverland pool at the Disneyland Hotel, and with zero budget. So personally, we had live planting material, mist, but I can't wait to visit your version of Neverland and the Misty Mountain. I don't know how you're going to pull off those clouds, but I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, that's you know what's interesting in what we do, that a lot of times I remember, like after the Tree of Life, you know, when we had the opening interviews and the you know, the marketing stuff, and then people were asking, so how can you top this? You know, and I didn't know how. I mean, that was the biggest thing in the world
it's such
at the
a global
time.
icon.
Yeah,
so many cultures around the world, from Viking mythology to
everything,
Middle Eastern cultures. That's such a
absolutely. And then you know, the next thing you ended up doing is creating the world's largest man-made sculpture, which is Mount Prometheus, the volcano in Tokyo DisneySea. So going to your point about the clouds, what's driving us through the years, over the years, of wanting to do what we do is to try to be able to do something new that we've never done before.
Yeah.
So the clouds are part of that, experience to, how do you do clouds? We don't know. Or for that matter, we just, created Pandora.
Yeah, if you
right?
do floating islands, I suppose you can do floating clouds, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think so. We kind of in the ballpark in that world,
Okay, I can't wait.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you. I mean, you shared with me some amazing projects you've done, from private residential kind of dream tree houses to, again, some of the, to me, wonders of the themed entertainment world, if not just the world period, in terms of man-made wonders. Truly, I mean, got to be some of the most Instagrammed images on the planet Earth.
We're hoping.
Other than made with God's hands. I mean, the hands of Zsolt, I think, are pretty. You're up there competing with God's handiwork. So, what do you consider, some of your proudest, or if you had to just put one up at the top of your list of, to date, proudest accomplishments? Because that's got to be a tough call to make.
It is. It's like which
baby
do you like the best, right? Truly. I mean, I have to say that Pandora. I mean, if somebody had told me, 20 years ago that, hey, one day you might do floating mountains, I was, what? And here we go.
Maybe in heaven, but not on this side.
That's right. So that was a wonderful, very collaborative, very interesting project. Just for, for the sake of the fact that, of course, we do art, right? That's our main focus. But to be able to create an artistically successful, creatively successful subject matter like a floating mountains, I mean, we really had to work very, very closely with engineers. I personally worked with a whole group of engineers for almost a year and a half to create all the vines that are basically connecting the floating mountains and basically kind of they're acting as
they're structural columns,
a connective tissue, but they are basically holding up the mountains,
right.
And that was a very, very educational process, I have to say, because you learn about engineering,
lateral forces,
exactly, and the wind load, and the fact that the wind can push things down, not just up, and all that. I mean, it was really, really fascinating, and it was a very complicated process. And anything that I had to move, because my job was to make sure that those vines look like they're hanging, not holding up,
right?
But at the smallest detail you move, they had to run that program with all that data for 48 hours or 72 hours every time.
Yeah, there's math involved.
Yeah, lots of it. And it was interesting because I was thinking, when I was talking, I was like, don't tell me you have to do this, I just want to, can you just not move this a little bit here and there? And they said, well, you need to understand, Zsolt, that this whole thing works like a spider web. You can just take one thread, you pull on one thread, and the whole entire thing reacts to that. I said, oh, okay, now that makes sense. So that was a very very fun thing to do, actually working with a bunch of engineers to create something beautiful.
Wow.
Great collaborative effort.
Now, and we're talking to Doris Woodward, and she actually did the Imagineering stint starting at Epcot and then left to do her own company with her ex-husband, and then came back to Imagineering. I know you had your own company for about a decade there,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Was that between DisneySeas?
Yes, after DisneySeas, everything kind of ran dry, the industry worldwide, so there was not a lot of things to do, frankly, in a theme park business. So I decided, I'm just going to start my own company, which I did. And I ended up working, for, some zoo projects, but mostly pretty high-end private, projects, which was a great experience, really, to be able to do something private, not so much restrictions that a theme park would yield, meaning that all the safety requirements, all the operational requirements, all the stuff that we have to be cognizant of during design for a theme park project. There was a lot more creatively free process, So
and these weren't exactly working for run-of-the-mill developers. I mean, you're talking some pretty highly creative collaborators, some some celebrities in their own right.
Yes,
right?
yes, and that was nice to be able to please, you know, pretty highly qualified clients, you know, that they knew what they wanted and they knew exactly what they wanted it to look like. So my job was to really, you know, use my creativity to please, you know, the clients, and I thought that was a great experience as well.
Any favorite clients, projects in that era, or not that you're allowed to talk about? That's okay. How about any lessons learned in terms of that outside consulting, where, you know, kind of leaving the Disney bubble for that decade? You know, things that have informed even your work, you know, currently, because it's just it's a different, you know, scope and scale and mentality, right?
I mean, to me, like I said, I mentioned freedom. That was really attractive, but I have to say, and I'll admit it, it's hard. It's hard to run your own business and make sure you're successful and make sure everybody gets paid all the time and, you know, all that. So it has its
accounts receivables.
Yeah, right.
What a concept. Invoices. A lot of people take that for granted, right, when you're working as part of that.
I did enjoy it. I have to say, I did enjoy doing that. But it's definitely a demanding way of life. I mean, I don't think I had a day off for 10 years, pretty much, because you can't. I mean, you gotta make sure that your employees are paid, you get the next job, you know, you're focusing on the one that's going on, so on and so forth. So there was not a lot of time off, actually, at all.
I hear you. I kind of feel like, you know, the burden of
I'm sure you know the
100 plus
feeling.
families that we've got to keep fed, you know. It's like
Exactly.
no small deal, you know, but you wish you could just play in the sandbox all the time. But, well, I want to ask you, you know, kind of something I know is near and dear to you. You know, there's a big road from being an individual contributor, working at a putt-putt golf course, to really needing to build literally mountain building armies, right? To multiply yourself, to develop talent.
Absolutely.
And to really kind of incubate talent from really around the world. And just like even you're getting ready to do in Japan, needing to do that over and over again. That just boggles the mind. How do you pull that off?
Well, I mean, first of all, to your point, you know, one person is only one person. But at working on these scales, you know, that we're doing mountains and theme parks and attractions, sometimes multiple attractions, it takes a lot of people. So thinking back, you know, working on Disneyland Paris, that was the first exposure to other talented folks as well. And ironically, even today we work together, almost the same exact group that we met, in 20-some plus years or age, you know, and we're still like a family working everywhere around the world, you know. And that's a huge plus. That's something that I really appreciated all along, and I always paid a lot of attention to the team that I work with. Because I think if the team is happy, the work is better. That's just the way I think. And if you appreciate the people you work with, you know, on a daily basis, then it does pay off, because you create a community that you know what to expect from each other, you know how to pitch in to make sure that we can, you know, jump over, you know, obstacles that otherwise you couldn't. So that's a very important aspect, I think, of what we do, and working, you know, globally. You know, we have to, of course, work in different countries, and although Disney has the ability and the willingness to basically move people to their locations where the park is being built, at the same time we have to do and make a lot of effort to develop local talent as well, whether it's China or Europe or Hong Kong or Japan, so on and so forth. So by doing that, we do actually develop an amazing group of talented people that are very unique in the world, because like we mentioned before, there's really no schooling for this, what we do. So it's you learn it on the street, let's just put it that way, right? So
or putt-putt golf course.
Yeah,
Michigan,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, right, pretty much. So we make a lot of effort to educate and train and develop and maintain a very talented group of people that can pull these amazing projects off, you know.
Well, I know you and I share a passion for indigenous peoples and First Nations and the Native American community in particular, and I know you've invested time in that community. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because
Sure.
I know that's a long game in terms of developing talent. But
Yeah, absolutely. And I started years ago. First, I started at Florida State University in Tallahassee to start a program about teaching students about theme finishes. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea is that, you know, basically I wrote the syllabus, created the class, created the program, and you know, I would go and basically work with the students and teach them how we do what we do. So basically they have to come up with a little project on their own, a little design intent, then that would consist of, you know, some of the theme finishes disciplines, whether it's a little piece of rock or rockwork or a building or a piece of tree, or I mean a piece of wood or a tree, whatever that might be. And then they have to create a little composition, and then they have to go through the same steps that we do, except on a much smaller scale, meaning they build their own cages, you know, they weld, they put the lath on, scratch, sculpt, and paint their projects. So that's where it started for me, to be able to do this whole outreach, you know, program. And then shortly after that, the idea came, well, this is going really well. Why don't I try to do something with the Native American community? So I had the wonderful opportunity to meet the president of the Institute of the American Indian Art in Santa Fe, Dr. Martin, and we basically forged a wonderful relationship and a friendship, and I've been doing that, I think, 6 years now. You know, so which is a great program, and I'm very grateful for Imagineering to support it and help to be able to do that, because it takes a lot of traveling and away from what I do on an everyday basis. So, you know, we found a great balance to be able to do that as well. And the whole program is based on, you know, the students working for a whole year, creating their projects, and then when the summer comes, then they would come and be part of an internship program with Walt Disney Imagineering, and then they would either go back to continue their studies, or if they really qualified and they really show a lot of interest and talent, then they actually end up working with us, which is a great opportunity for anyone, I think. So it's been a very successful program. I think as of today, I had like 30 or 40 students, you know, all together coming and working with us during the summer and going back to continue their studies or stay with us. So at the time, it was very fortunate because we had Avatar going on,
yeah.
So they could come and be part of that project. Imagine how cool that is. And then the Galaxy Edge, you know, on both coasts, you know, in California and in Florida.
I forgot to mention that little tattoo project, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the timing worked out great for the students to be able to, you know, come from their reservations or from Santa Fe and end up working on a Disney project that are, you know, world famous subject matters, you know.
Yeah.
So that I think that's a really cool thing to be able to do, yeah. And the fact that the Native American community is so, you know, precious to me, I feel very fortunate that Disney can actually support outreach programs like such, and being able to give something back to that community that needs it so badly anyway. Any support anybody can provide is always welcome.
Yeah, well, I'm personally so inspired. I can't wait to collaborate with you on some of those efforts as well. I know you've got to pack up and catch a plane. We're going to resume on the other side of the Pacific Pond with our Q&A. So thanks
Perfect.
Again.
Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time, and it's an honor and a pleasure of mine. Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, hello again.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for everyone for joining live, and we try to make it as seamless as possible, but we're glad to be able to catch you before you caught that plane and now on the other side of the pond here.
That's right. That was a long one.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, I already have a couple of great questions rolling in.
Okay.
Satria asks, Zolt, can you tell me about your Asian collection in your home that was on display? As an Indonesian myself, I spotted some wayang and I got quite excited. What projects have you done that were influenced by Asian culture?
Well, actually, the artifacts are through my travels. You know, I had a great opportunity to travel with one of the best people you can travel with, Joe Rody, you know, who knows the world more than anybody else. So we went to Mongolia together, and then we went to Bhutan together a couple of years ago. So some of the artifacts that you've seen are from those countries, and of course some of them, you know, from Indonesia, like you mentioned. We went to Sulawesi one time and Bali for a research trip. So some of the artifacts are from there.
Yeah, any influences from those Asian travels specifically on any of your?
Of course, Animal Kingdom has, of course, a bountiful, you know, beautiful Asian related areas. So that was one of the main reasons, you know, we started going to Bali actually um, to purchase artifacts to support the narrative for the Animal Kingdom park.
Well, I'm sure the IRS is glad to hear that all those tax write-offs were really appropriated. Another question, do you feel that you're growing up in Hungary and your interest in Native American culture specifically has inspired your artistic aesthetic and or work in the parks?
Look, I mean, that's of course everything affects, you know, your artistic side, you know, whether it's music or performing art or culture or history. It doesn't really matter. I mean, the whole idea is to be an artist, to really absorb everything around you and try to turn it into something either pleasant for other people or something that you want to express your, you know, your own feelings by.
Yep. I've got an interesting question from Taylor. Is asking, are you a part of, or do you have to ever help justify the actual capital cost of doing and just the hard costs of some of these amazing rockwork projects?
I'm not quite understanding the question, to be honest with you.
Well, you know, just the process of getting approval to do some of these things, whether it's on the estimating side or, you know, the value engineering side. Just I think the process of getting a green light to do these amazing, you know, world's largest sculptures.
Right. Look, I mean, we have an extensive team who they do nothing but that estimate. But obviously, when it comes to theme finishes, we do help and participate. To base information based on historics. You know, to kind of help to make sure that, particularly in different parts of the world, you know, prices differ. So we do help to kind of, you know, support a reasonable estimate, you know, usually to make sure that it's within the ballpark and it's going to be successful.
You mean
so indirectly, yes, we are involved somewhat.
Yeah. So it's not just send me the bill when you're done.
No.
Shoot. All right. Another question from Taylor. What are some key things you look for in your work that pull together the realistic and unique rockwork projects? So I guess just from a realism, authenticity. I know someone else was asking about perspective specifically.
That's an interesting question because it really, our job is to make sure that we support the narrative, particularly within, you know, the world of Disney, because, you know, that's what we do. That's what we have to do, right? So now the narrative can be very realistic, like Mount Prometheus, for instance, or Animal Kingdom, or other projects, or it can be, you know, somewhat whimsical, somewhat cartoony, like Toontown, for instance. And those are big differences in an artistic approach. And I never forget that we just completed Disneyland Paris, and in that park, everything was fairly realistic. So when I came back and started working on Toontown, we did the sample program, and the art director at the time kept telling me that it's too much detail, too much detail, too much detail. And I didn't know what he was really talking about until I got to a point where, oh, I see these cultural interpretations of things have to look like a watercolor, you know, illustration. And that was quite a, transition between looking for really all the realistic detail and turn it into more like an illustration. It's quite a process though, but it was fun.
Awesome. Well, we've got Cassandra asking, what advice would you give to someone who wants to enter the industry?
Don't say no.
That's good.
It's not easy, but frankly, it's just I would just encourage everybody to take every opportunity you can and try to make the most of it. Don't get tired, don't get frustrated. It can be very frustrating and tiring, but I mean that's the idea, to be able to push through sometimes when you feel like, oh man, I can't do that, and then the success will follow. But there's a lot of rewards, a lot of challenges, but be innovative and really just try to go the extra mile. That's what comes to my mind.
Eliza's asking, how long does it typically take to prepare before the actual building begins in a project?
Of course, it depends on the size, but usually about 2 to 3 years of blue sky and planning, and kind of figure out layouts and like I explained during the interview, to bring it to a point where everything works together from all the different perspectives. And then the construction usually takes about a couple of years, year and a half to a couple of years, depending.
Great. Hey, our very own Courtney Day, who, by the way, is a rock star in terms of keeping all of us organized and getting this whole thing pulled off, the project management mindset. She's asking, which project have you worked on, either from Disney to putt or otherwise, was the most challenging?
The most challenging.
The maximum brain damage.
All a little bit challenging, but I mean, to me, you have two things. You have the creative challenge. I mean, to me, really, the Pandora with the floating mountains was the most like, wow, how do we really do that? So creatively, that was to me very challenging. But besides that, it's really when you work in the heat, you work out in the weather and the elements. I mean, that just adds, depending on which part of the world you are in, So, I mean, it depends which way you want to kind of look at it, really.
Yeah. Hey, the legendary Chris Runko said, Zsolt, great to see you. And congratulations on all the great projects. He wanted to ask you about one of our colleagues, the late Parker Boydell Jr.
Boydell, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
We worked on him on Grizzly Peak at DCA, and his work on the Tree of Life, a terrific Native American artist. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, actually, Parker was one out of the 3 artisans that joined the Tree of Life, and as you mentioned, he had passed away, unfortunately, a few years ago. He was from the Kiowa tribe, a very hardworking, very talented artist. And, when I said they're still with us, he is always with us in spirit too. So, but we were very fortunate and honored to be able to have Parker work with us. He was truly a one-of-a-kind person, a fun guy to be with and be around, and one of the hardest working ones, by the way. So thanks for asking about him.
Yeah. Alessandra, one of our next gen members, is asking, if I were to make a small model involving rockwork, what materials would be best to use? Any specific types of clay? What I love is the diversity of the questions, from trying to get industry, small scale, big picture.
Well, I mean, basically what we do in Imagineering, we use a foam, a urethane foam. We usually use 4-pound foam, but you can really use clay or other, versions. I mean, other options too. But I mean, the foam is the easiest to kind of manipulate and easy to kind of, even if you break something, you can glue it back. So that's what I would suggest if you can put your hands on a 4-pound. Yellow, it's a yellow colored, 4-pound urethane foam.
Yep, I would second that, given the skill sets we look for. Dave is asking, what do you do when you're not creating art? I.e., what do you do to relax?
I like to play music. I like to hike when there's time for that. I like nature. And I do have a lot of hobbies, actually. You know, I enjoy origami. I enjoy, like I said, playing music. I enjoy bicycling. So really the question is, what do I have the time for, to be honest with you? Because that's the biggest challenge usually, to have the time.
Awesome. Kimberly's asking, you discussed the programs that you've led for students. What's the best way to get involved in learning new disciplines like theme finishes for students coming from a place with little to no experience? Common thread. People want to play in your sandbox, my friend.
Yeah, that's why. Look, I mean, basically, that's kind of hard because either you're able to enter a program like what, you know, the Institute of the American Indian Art or some other school, but there are schools out there, and we are working hard to create outreach programs, you know, at the same time with Imagineering. So I think and that's something that I can look into and maybe have a follow-up, you know, if you don't mind. And I'll be more than happy to kind of do a little research of what would be an available, you know, option for somebody who's just really want to get started in this field.
That's amazing of you. Sydney's asking, how is digital sculpting and 3D modeling affecting the process of designing finishes?
That's a great question, actually. It is becoming more and more a part of what we do. You know, the 3D printing is a very convenient thing to do because you can immediately put it in a 3D, you know, from the digital data, the digital format, and then see it right away in your hand, and you can move it around. The digital sculpting is something, to be honest with you, I'm just getting very interested in. It's a new language we need to learn. It's really difficult to kind of, you know, leave, you know, the decades old or hundreds of years old, you know, traditional techniques behind. So it's really, it's going to be an overlap, I think, for quite a while, to be honest with you. But we're definitely interested in it, and we're pursuing, you know, the different options and how that can be applied to what we do.
Great. I feel like we keep zooming out and zooming back up and zooming in, but we've got a kind of a high level one from Bradley. Is it worth it to be an Imagineer? Are there constraints that you mentioned working there versus working for yourself or for another company?
Of course, it's a wonderful place to be. I couldn't be any more happy. It's almost like you become a different person once you work for the company. What I meant by constraints is because we have to please so many people. Imagine that we have, you know, tens and thousands of people coming. We have all kinds of people with different abilities or disabilities, and we have to make sure that they can have fun too. So you have to design things with, you know, with a lot of sensitivity, you know, in mind. So therefore, and not just that, but basically operational needs. You know, we got to make sure that people can feed, you know, themselves, make sure they can, you know, cool down, make sure, you know, they can shop, so on and so forth. So I mean, those elements of just basically driving a lot of the thinking and a lot of the design that you have to put into a theme park versus to a private residence where you really basically mostly all you need to worry about is the client and their needs, you know. So that's a big difference there.
Yeah, I've got a budding artist, and I tell her, if you want to design for yourself and be a fine artist, great. If you want to, you know, if you're open to designing for others, that's a whole another art form.
And that's true. Yeah, absolutely true. Yes.
You know, Matthew, like I'm sure others are just fascinated with your backstory and history. And he's asking, what year specifically did you leave Hungary, and where did you go again right after Hungary?
Well, actually, it was 1987. You know, April when we left, and we went directly to Paris because I, you know, spoke French, so I figured that would be, you know, kind of helpful to be in a place where you can actually speak the language. So that's why we went there. And I actually, it kind of turned out because sometimes the waiting time to be able to get you know, paperwork done, particularly at the time, you know, when I left, when you were a political refugee, it took sometimes a couple of years even, but we got pretty fortunate, and the turnaround time was fairly fast. So we ended up actually coming to the States, I think 6 months after that.
That's great. Um, let's see, a little more of a technical question again. When you're dealing with a fairly realistic theme or effect that you're aiming for, does rockwork have to be from concrete, or do you ever incorporate real natural products or materials?
Well, I mean, mostly, it's cement that we're using, and the reason for that really is because of the durability, and we're trying to use construction materials that will last for a long, long time. Do we incorporate natural materials? Yes, sometimes we do. Sometimes we incorporate, driftwood or real boulders, that kind of stuff. But once again, it has to be treated. We have to make sure that it lasts for a long, long time.
Right. How often, as far as just using them for making forms, for example, is that something that you use?
Absolutely. We usually actually take molds of different wood textures, and we apply that into the wet cement, and then we keep rendering it after that to enhance it. So yes, we do use natural textures, take molds off of that, and then use it as a pattern, as a base pattern that we further develop throughout the sculpting process.
That's great. Eliza's asking, what's the hardest part of your job?
The hardest part. Travel is not easy, I have to say, but basically it's to make sure that you organize well, make sure that you set up the job well. I mean, the challenge is to make sure that you have the right talent, the right amount of talent. That's very important, because without that, as I explained, it's impossible to do what we do. So to make sure that you always have the right aptitude of the team, it's very important. And after that, once you develop a great team, then everything kind of falls in place.
Got an interesting question. How often does environmental graphics and wayfinding play a role in your rockwork projects?
Well, I mean, in a park, all those elements are very important. Do they interact a lot with rockwork and graphics? Not so much, to be honest with you, but graphics is a very important part of the theme park design. So if you're a graphic artist, and that's why you're asking the question, yes, there's plenty of opportunities to practice your art. Yes.
Well, I would say if you put a floating mountain above someone's head or in front of them, that's a pretty effective wayfinding.
Yeah.
So I would say you don't really need signs if you got a mountain dangling. Great job. Let's see. This is one that I really resonate with. Just kind of big picture, in terms of working with some of the indigenous artists, specifically Native Americans. How has that just big picture shaped how you've designed, or your approach to design, philosophically, functionally?
It's more like a participation, the more like working, probably, having a team, that's very inclusive, and having all these nationalities working together, which is a really unique, a unique opportunity and a unique honor, to be honest with you, to because we have, I mean, just within the team finishes, I think, sometimes depending upon where we're working, we're looking at maybe 18, 20 different nationalities working together, so it's a really, really eclectic team. And the fact that the Native Americans are part of that, it just makes it that much richer, really.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give people a chance to ask a few more questions, or one more question, but before they do that, I can't believe, I'm shocked that no one's asked about fashion, earrings, just things that Joe Rohde, and specifically, it's not on camera now, but those amazing boots that you were wearing, hanging out in your fireplace. What was the story on those? Those were pretty cool.
The boots? Oh, well.
You even remember which ones you were wearing?
Yes, I do. Actually, Joe came over one day, and I said,
cool boots. And he says, well, they're a little small. You want them? I said, yeah. So he took them off and then gave him a pair of slippers. He went home with the slippers and left the boots. So I'm still cherishing them ever since.
You remember where they were from? Or
Turkey. They're from Turkey.
Turkey, no kidding.
He bought them in Turkey.
Awesome. Well, Zsolt, thanks again. Thanks for all the participants. We had an amazing turnout, and you know, you don't meet a mountain builder, someone that sculpts a story every day, and for your generosity of time. We really just appreciate you as not only a TM master, but as a mentor for so many people historically over the years. And I've shared this with you. You know, our Storyland team, you are just such a hero to so many of the members, specifically on the specialty fabrication side, that quite often doesn't quite get the same level of FaceTime, glory, press, PR, but you know, it's not every day that you get to hang with a rock star. So thanks again.
So much, and thanks for helping to put it all together, Mel. Thank you and your team and everybody who was involved. Appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully we can do this, you know, sometimes again in the future. And I wish everybody a safe upcoming, you know, weekend, and take good care. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody.